So I'm going to talk a bit about the Ewing Commission, which was the formal commission established by the province to deal, or to quote, investigate the half-breed problem, is what it was referred to. So I've highlighted 4 areas that I want to talk about in this context about the commission. Okay, so first of all, the problem. So in order to justify its action, the province, as in any province, provincial government will do this, is how do we bring this within our jurisdiction to deal with it? We can't just go out and do it if it's not within our jurisdiction, right? So they had the pull this up here. I don't have the fancy flags that Larry had. So you had half-breed Métis, who were landless, the road allowance people. You have heard reference to that phrase, undoubtedly. Métis people are certainly familiar with that phrase. You also, however, at this point in time had many non-treaty or non-status Indians who were in equally bad social circumstances as a result of the Depression, having lost their status through changes to the Indian Act and therefore losing the right to reside on reserve lands, resulted in them too facing the same situations. And what would quite often happen is that they would gravitate to the same communities quite often as these landless Métis. In the academic literature, it is referred to as they would quite often sort of settle near reserve lands, but that's not definitive. Okay, so to deal with all of these social issues within their proper jurisdiction, the province characterized it as dealing with, quote, problems of health, education, and welfare pursuant to the Provincial Public Inquiries Act. Secondly, I wanted to talk about the subjects, or the people, but it's the subjects who were studied in the Half-Breed Commission. So the commission stated that the subjects were, quote, by either term, Métis or half-breed, and that means a person of mixed blood, white and Indian, who lives the life of the ordinary Indian and includes a non-treaty Indian, quote. Now it's very significant that in 1930, non-treaty Indians included those persons who had lost their status, as I said. So we have here, the commission is treating non-treaty Indians the same as the Métis in this all-encompassing study of the social conditions, and that's legitimate. I mean, that was their jurisdiction to deal with social issues. Thirdly, the proceedings. When I said that initially the Métis Association had evolved as a result of the advocacy or the desire by the people to politically reorganize themselves for the improvement of their lives, it was the Métis Association. So the Métis Association was lobbying with the provincial government that early on in the commission proceedings, that it was by virtue of rights of land through the failure of the script. They were saying in their submissions in Edmonton very early on in the proceedings, the situation that people are in socially is certainly contributed by the failure of the script. But the commission refused to talk about that, and I've got a quote here. And you can see this. You can almost see the tone in the transcript. This is from the commission. Quote, I do not see much good in raking up any mistakes that were made years ago. Do you wish to establish that there was a moral responsibility on past governments for the condition of the half-breed population today? I'm simply saying that will not get us far to harp on what has happened in the past, unquote. So it appears that the commissioners did not want to talk about Métis land entitlement, and further that if the Métis representatives of the MAA who were trying to talk about it, trying to make that connection that without land we have no place to live, without a place to live and to grow our gardens and to raise our children, we're going to be faced with this hardship. But they wouldn't go there. They said, we're not going there, and if you want to go there, then there's no point to this. So the solution, I said I was talking about 4 areas. There was 3 points I wanted to make about this. So the Metis Colonies were the proposed recommendation of the Commission after doing it. It had about 35 community hearings after the proceedings in Edmonton. They were proposing land as the solution after they wouldn't talk about land with the Métis Association. They proposed Metis Colonies be established pursuant to the Métis Population Betterment Act of 1938. So if you recall, further to that, the Ewing Commission had specified that the half-breed subjects included non-treaty Indians. They explicitly said that in the report, that this study includes non-treaty Indians and that non-treaty Indians includes people who are enfranchised. The legislation, however, which was enacted for the purpose of implementing the recommendations of the Commission, the Métis Population Betterment Act, later to be known as the Métis Betterment Act, it explicitly excluded Indians, those Indians, I should say, who were, by the Commission's own definition, included in the study. And I wish I would have brought that section of the Act, but within the definition section, it specifically says that Métis includes persons of mixed blood, but does not include either an Indian or non-treaty Indian. Okay. Further, what's also significant about this legislation is that it provided that the minister could establish settlement associations for the purpose of management of the settlement areas. Okay, and in doing so, I would submit that would basically cut off any involvement of the Métis Association of Alberta as the political representative. The MAA had been involved in bringing the study together, in advocating with the province to do something. The Commission was the result of those efforts. Now, as a result, their solution in establishing these settlement areas, they cut off the representation of the MAA. Unless they would come to the settlements and live, then they could perhaps become a member of the board. So they were excluded and replaced by the settlement councils, which were established at each area. At each settlement area, a supervisor would also be appointed by the province, and they would operate under the very strict supervision of the provincial government. So this, arguably, I would say, would be the first obvious split between the Métis Association and the settlements.